Welcome back to Lust is Boring. I don't know if you had the opportunity to be with us at Seek 2023 out in St. Louis this past week, but indescribable. This is a college event put on by Fellowship of Catholic University students where they had 17,000 college students in their free time on their winter break deciding to spend that time in formation, Eucharistic adoration. The lines for confession were thousands of people long. What struck me is that if 1/10 of that many people, like 1,700 college students showed up at the Vatican protesting something, it would be all over the headlines, all over the news. But 17,000 show up for Eucharistic adoration. You won't hear a blip on the radar, but it was beautiful. So if you're a college student, young adult, go to this thing next year. Seek 2024. It's going to be in St. Louis. Just an indescribable event. So, and for those who helped volunteer at our booth to help keep that, I just want to send you guys a special shout out. Thank you for that. Also want to send a thank you out to Canopy, the newest sponsor here of Lust is Boring. For those of you parents out there in particular looking for internet safety, there's a lot of software out there that block porn websites. I mean, that's kind of the easy part. But what about the apps, like especially TikTok, Discord? Canopy actually has artificial intelligence that will filter the stuff as the kids browse through it within milliseconds. If it detects immodest imagery, blocks that right out of there. It can even prevent sexting if they're about to send an immodest image, can catch them on that. And so if you want to try it free for a month, you just go to canopy.us/Jason and you can try it out. I'll put the link in the show notes. You can also get 15% off there. Do code 15 off. But as parents, we need as many tools as we can to stay on top of all this stuff. And so Canopy is one of the newest things that we've started using in our family, and I found it to be really effective. So check out canopy.us/Jason. And then also another heads up, the book just came out that we've been working on for about a year and a half, 2 years, on gender, called Male, Female, Other, a Catholic Guide to Understanding Gender. So whether you're a parent, who's got a kid wrestling with gender dysphoria, maybe you're a high school teacher, youth minister, and you've wondered like, hey, what do I do? Should I use this kid's preferred pronouns? I've got a kid in the youth group that says they're non-binary. What is the pastoral way to handle this in love and charity and clarity? Or maybe you're a college student and you've got to sit through some gender studies class and you've got to go toe-to-toe with the professor with these ideologies they're throwing out there. Well, sex is a spectrum. There aren't really two sexes, and there's an infinite number of genders. And how do you answer this stuff? Well, that's what we spent the last year and a half researching. The end of the book's got about 1,000 references in it from peer-reviewed scientific journals backing up what the church teaches, but then also offering a very pastoral tone of how to love these individuals and walk with them. Even if you experience gender dysphoria, it'll be helpful to show your path not only to wholeness, but also to holiness. So if you want to get a free copy of the book, if you become a supporter on Patreon for the next week or so, we'll just send you a free copy of the book. So if you join at the tier of $20 on Patreon to support Lust is Boring, we'll just mail you a free copy of the book straight from the warehouse. Just go to patreon.com/Jason Everett and you can sign up there. Now, today's guest for the show, Sister Maris Stella, one of the Sisters of Life. Love this religious order. Now, she's a graduate of the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. Served for the United States Navy for 5 years, and then decided she wanted to go into special ops, meaning the religious life, not necessarily the Navy SEALs. And so she got a master's degree at the Augustine Institute, which is a great place to go to study or do remote education if you want. Now she is a Sister of Life at the Archdiocese of Denver. So, Sister, thank you for coming on the program today.
Thanks, Jason. Great to be with you.
Now, you were at Seek as well, right? What did you think about that whole experience?
It was fantastic. It's just inspiring to be with so many people who love God and to see so many people who are going to confession, as you said, and converting their lives. And I think one of the best lines I heard from a young person there, a college student, she says, I know that I'm not alone anymore. Mm-hmm. On my campus, on my college campus, I just have a few friends who are Catholic, but coming here, I know I'm not alone. There's so many of us. And so to just see so many people be built up and renewed in the faith it's a great thing.
Yeah, it was beautiful for me. I got to be at the booth, just interact with a lot of college students, young adults. One girl came up and she said she was in a really toxic relationship with her boyfriend. And so her campus minister, I think one of the Focus missionaries, said, why don't you read this book? And so gave her a copy of our How to Find Your Soulmate Without Losing Your Soul book. And the first chapter is the top 10 guys to avoid. And so she said, you know what? She said, I hadn't finished the first chapter and I dumped that guy. But she said, that's not the end of the story. She said, I really shifted my whole lifestyle after reading that book. And she said, to be honest, she said, I've given away more than 1,000 copies of your book since I read it. She said, now I'm doing ministry with people who are strippers, prostitutes, people leaving the sex trade industry. And it was just beautiful to see what God has done with this girl's life and how I think the devil uses toxic relationships to block us from our missionary calling, our vocations, and all that stuff. And that was just beautiful to see. Once that purity of heart was put in place, she had the clarity of vision to see what God was calling her to. But man, it was an awesome experience to see all those students. Now, in your case, the calling of religious life from the Naval Academy, I'm sure a lot of people, when they hear that, like, how do you go from point A to point B? Obviously, you want to be part of something militant here, whether it's church militant or something else. But tell us your story a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So growing up, I went to Mass on Sunday and I lived my faith, but it wasn't ever something that was my own. Although I did have a strong devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary. As a child, I consecrated my life to Jesus through Mary when I was the day after my first Holy Communion. Wow. So I believe Our Lady totally honored that commitment for years. So anyways, when I went to college, I went to the Naval Academy. It kind of attracts a lot of intense people. Mm-hmm. These people were intense about everything, including their faith. And so for the first time, I met people really alive and on fire and who loved God. And it was through these relationships that I came to know and love God myself. And it was this discovery that God loved me and that he's given his life for me. And it was just this intuitive response in me that if I knew that God loved me and he made me for something, made me for a great love, that it was a natural desire that rose up that I wanted to give my whole life to him. But I didn't know what that meant. And I didn't know any religious sisters. I'd never seen The Sound of Music. I was really had a long ways to go. But over time, God just put people in my life and on my path. And I also was discovering that what a religious vocation really was. It was this invitation to love in the most profound way, to receive everything from God and give everything back to him. To be a bride of Christ is the best gift anyone could ever imagine. And so once I kind of discovered all that was and meant to be, I had to, after I graduated from the academy, I had to serve 5 years in the Navy. I had a 5-year commitment. So I worked on a ship for a couple of years and I lived in Italy, and during all of that time, God was really leading to himself. And when I met our community, the Sisters of Life, I couldn't believe that it existed in the church and the world. It was everything that was in my heart I was seeing lived out. And so I went on a discernment retreat with the community, and I cried the whole time because I knew it was God was asking me. It was a big sacrifice. I had to give up a lot of things I loved, but I can assure you that God is the 100-fold. He is more than enough. Mm-hmm. And so just a neat story to tie it back to Our Lady. After the discernment retreat, I did the 33-day consecration to Our Lady with Louis de Montfort. On the 33rd day, I went back to the church I had grown up in, where I'd made my consecration as a little girl. And I gave my life to Jesus through Mary again. And I came home that afternoon, and my letter of acceptance to the Sisters of Life arrived in the mail. Wow. And so I just felt like Full it was circle. Our Lady just with me, for me the whole time. Honoring my commitment, like winning my vocation for me, protecting my vocation. And so I've been in the community for 16 years and I love it. I'm so happy. It's the best gift I could have ever asked for.
Now, what would you say to someone, person listening, whether they're 15 or 35 and have kind of always had it on the back burner of their mind and maybe a little afraid, how do I know? I kind of want to get married, kind of want to do this, kind of want to do that. I think a lot of people get stuck there in that place of like paralysis by analysis, and they don't know how to move forward in the discernment process. What would you say to that questioning heart that might have a little anxiety because they might think, okay, am I guilting myself into a vocation, or am I just fearfully staying outside of it? Any words that you'd give to that person?
Yeah. Well, first of all, adoration is essential. Spending time in prayer, and God has a way of making himself known. And so if we're open to him, we're asking him what he wants, he's going to show us. But also, we're not meant to discern alone. We need the help of other people, support of other people. So I'd encourage someone who's discerning to, if they haven't made a step, to make a step, to contact a vocations director of a community, maybe visit a religious community just to see what it is we're talking about. Sometimes people discern in like the abstract. And I know before I entered religious life, I had ideas of what religious life was like. And I can tell you it's so much better than I imagined it. So So yeah, to make a step to prayer is absolutely essential. Prayer, praying the rosary for sure, and then also seeking the help of others, because we're not meant to do this alone.
Yeah, I think that advice works pretty much on any vocation. I talked to a guy today and some over at the Seek conference who, really felt compelled by the conference. Go ask a girl out, like go initiate love. And what was great is like some of them did, so I heard that workshop and then I asked a girl on a date. We had lunch right there at Seek. And then it became clear, okay, we're not supposed to date. That process was so much faster because it was fueled by action than if like, okay, let me do, a 54-day rosary novena to see if I should ask this girl out. And, no, like just ask her out, go on a date, see how it works. A lot of times you just get a lot more clarity when there's movement and motion instead of just like, okay, was that a sign? Is this a sign? Is that a sign? Like, just give it a shot. Ask the girl out. If it doesn't work, it'll become pretty clear, and you've just narrowed down, your search for your future spouse at least by one, so that's progress there. So now I know the Sisters of Life, I've worked with you guys for years, core to the mission is, the pro-life message. Now, did you have experience doing crisis pregnancy counseling, pro-life work prior to entering the Sisters of Life, or was that part of the charism that drew you into this vocation? Because it's not only religious life. That's a big category.
Yep.
Okay, missionaries at charity. We've got SOLT sisters here, the Nashville Dominicans, the Ann Arbor Dominican. Like, there's a lot of great stuff going on. How did you feel? Okay, the navy and blue, that's where I'm going.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
No, it's beautiful because God doesn't call us to just any place. It's not like you're meant to marry any old guy or any old girl.
Yeah.
He really has a way of making himself known, and he calls us to the place where he called me to the place where my heart would meet his heart. Mm-hmm. He calls you to the place where your heart will meet the heart of Christ. And so, I had some experience in the pro-life movement. I was certainly pro-life, but when I met our community and just to know that what we believe, that every person is sacred, unique, and unrepeatable, infinitely loved by God, and that our value doesn't come from anything we can do, produce, or achieve, what we look like, any of those things, but that the fact that we're made in the image of God. I knew that this was like the truth that I needed to hear, that I was starving to hear, and that our world is starving to hear. Yeah. Also, too, like our missions to serving pregnant women, so beautiful that, to support women. And when a woman's loved, she can do anything. A woman, it's the natural desire of a woman's heart to choose life. And when she's loved and supported, she can. And then just also, I was so attracted to our community, our hope and healing mission to those who are suffering after the experience of abortion. Yeah. So many women suffer, and men as well, really suffer from this and afraid they can't be forgiven. And just to know of God's radical love and mercy and to be so close to it in our mission, serving women in that situation, it's just profound. I fall in love with God again to see that he died to save us, to free us from our sins. This is just a beautiful message of truth that I'm so grateful for. And so I just want everyone to know that they're loved and that God wants to forgive them and heal them and bring them to the fullness of life.
Yeah, I remember when I was in college, I did 3 years of sidewalk counseling at an abortion clinic in Pittsburgh that wasn't too far from Steubenville. And I remember one day I was out there on the sidewalk, talking to the women and praying and all that. And a religious sister came by. I don't remember if she was Sister of Life or not, but she said, oh, can I give it a try? And I'm like, go right ahead, sister, give it a shot. And she saved like more than 10 babies in one morning.
Wow.
And that was like, at a point, I like pulled her something. Okay, sister, what did you say? Like, what's the thing? What's the phrase that really? Yeah. But it wasn't, what she said. It was just who she was. It was a charism that had been entrusted to her for that mission. Yep. And seeing the gifting that she received in that area really helped me in my own discernment of like, maybe this isn't where I'm supposed to be serving God. Yeah, it's super important to be there in front of the clinics, praying and witnessing and interceding and all that stuff. But instead of maybe dealing with the supply of abortion, maybe my calling is more on the demand for abortion side with unchastity. And so I know you guys work with university students as well. And so it's not just okay, now we have an unplanned pregnancy, let's get to work, sisters. You guys you have more preemptive strikes coming in a sense, right? In terms of the work you're doing there.
Yeah, no, it's so true. Like our work on university campuses, we've, one of this story is so meaningful to me. I worked in our hope and healing mission for years and our pregnancy mission for years and serving women. But in particular in our hope and healing mission, so many of the women that we worked with had abortions in college. And this really came home to me. One time one of our sisters was visiting a family member in the South, and she had gone into a restaurant with her parents, and this waitress, a middle-aged waitress, came over to her, and she'd never seen a sister before, and she said, "Wow, I like your dress." Said, yes, I'm a sister. And she said, "Well, what do you do?" And she said, "Well, we help women who are pregnant and tempted to abortion." And this waitress just welled up with tears, and she looked at the sister and said, "Where were you when I needed you?"
Oh, wow.
And so our work on university campuses is really a response to that question. Where were you when we want to be there with these women. We are with them and for them.
Yeah.
And we want to help them to know that love is the answer, that God has a plan for their lives, and that this unplanned pregnancy is not the end of their lives, and that God can bring something extraordinarily beautiful out of it. And so, we're on numerous different college campuses working with young women, and it's a great adventure, actually.
Yeah, I remember speaking at the March for Life in Canada several years ago, and after all the presentations, we did the march, and there was someone protesting the people marching, and it was this woman standing across the street, and you could hear her from blocks ahead as you were approaching, just blood-curdling screams from the depths of her soul at the marcher, all kinds of obscenities and scream, and as everyone's just walking by, I'm just praying for her, whatever. But just a lot of times we just look at the reaction and don't pay attention to the roots of underneath of the anguish that soul has been through. And we just see the anger. Like, you're not really mad at me. There's an anger that you feel towards your previous partner, maybe towards yourself, towards the situation. And processing that sometimes is so difficult to look inside. And how do I sort through what happened to me and what I did? And so it just gets vomited on other people in a violent way. I remember when I was doing the sidewalk counseling one day, and there was one of the guys who guarded the door, one of the police officers. Sometimes when it was kind of a slow time, you'd start talking to the police officers and kind of befriend the guys a little bit to be on better terms. And I started talking to this guy, and he starts just opening up to me. And he just said, my marriage is falling apart. I'm struggling with alcohol. And he said, every time I go to work, here at the abortion clinic, he said, I hear these voices in my head telling me to kill, to kill, to kill. Where do you think this is coming from? And I'm like, well, and I started gently explaining him, he kind of works in the vestibule of hell here. And, there's a lot of death here, and I said, do you mind if I pray over you? And he said, oh, please, I prayed over the guy, and and then he went back to work, and I went back to what I was doing. And it must have been like a week or two later, and I'm just down the block, and I look, and the police cars are out front, and like the manager of the clinic comes out, she talks to officers, and they start pointing down toward me. And I'm like, well, what's going on? And so the police officers come down, and they said, okay, we've gotten a report that you tried to assault the manager of the clinic here, and that you apparently tried to ask her out to coffee, and when she said no, you tried to steal her purse, and you chased her down the street, but she was able to get into the clinic before you could catch up to her, and we need to report this. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, okay, let me get this straight. A, I don't like coffee, all right? So I wouldn't ask a woman out to coffee because I wouldn't even drink it. B, I'm the fastest guy in the baseball team, and if she can outrun me in those heels down the sidewalk, there's a little leap of logic there. No, and I said, these people were here. I don't even know who the woman was. And sure enough, they took us to court, and it turns out the judge who is in charge of, or I guess one of the people in charge of whether or not this judge gets, to his bench his spot renewed on the, the seat of the court or whatever, was on the board of the abortion clinic. And so when it came for him to rule the judgment, he said, you're guilty. And I'm like, is this really happening? And then we had to have a retrial, and then they tried it again with a different judge, and the judge is totally dismissed it. He's like, no, get out of here. And he knew what these people were up to, trying to legally harass us, and he gave them a good talking to. But it was really amazing just to see just how willing they were to just attack. And when we see the attacks, but you gotta look what's underneath all this stuff. Don't just react. Respond. Right. What's underneath all of this suffering. So
there's so much pain, and that's why it's just so important to over and over again to preach this message of mercy. That there's no sin too great for God's mercy. That He wants to heal us. He wants to restore us and renew us. And bring us back home.
Yeah.
Yeah. So people never tire of hearing that they can be forgiven, that God loves them no matter what. And it's just so refreshing for people. Yeah.
Amen. Now with the college students that you minister to, as they discern their own vocations and they try to pursue purity of heart, what would you say are maybe one or two of the main obstacles that you think the young people are facing the most in terms of the purity that's keeping them from seeing their vocation? Or what can they do to counteract those things so that they can be pure of heart and listen to what God is calling them to do?
Yeah, there's such a desire and a thirst for love in every human heart. And so many go astray looking for it in unhealthy relationships or find themselves addicted to drugs or alcohol and pornography. And so I think some of those are unhealthy relationships, and then these addictions are really the struggle that so many face. But I've seen like so many beautiful stories. I know a young woman I was talking to recently. It was really, hearing her story was like kind of witnessing a resurrection take place. She got into unhealthy relationships, found some addictions to pornography and all of these things. And then over time, her eyes were kind of opened, and what happened is she began to go to adoration. And slowly over time, that desire and longing she had for love, Jesus himself was filling in her. And all the addictions no longer became attractive. And just something shifted in her, and interiorly, it was really miraculous. So she was doing all the right things, going to confession, seeking the sacraments, surrounding herself with good friends. But I just know that, St. Paul tells us where sin abounds, grace abounds all the more. So God wants to heal us. He wants to forgive us. And if people are willing to turn themselves over to him, he'll work miracles in our souls. So the grace is available.
Yeah. A thread I hear coming through what you're saying, just a lot of times when we think of overcoming vices or whatever, it's like, well, try this and do this and do this and do this. But in a more effective means almost seems just be. Just be in his presence. Just be still. Just be loved. And let God do the work. Because a lot of times we think, what do I need to do different? What strategy? And yeah, sometimes we need to do some strategies and whatever, but a lot of it's just sitting still long enough to be loved, and just being in adoration. A lot of times that's where the transformation can take place, if we could just take the time to just sit still. I remember John Paul II saying, were we to disregard the Eucharist, how could we overcome our own deficiency? And so just being still, and then just letting him do his work. Now, speaking of work, you guys, before we wrap up, we've got the March for Life coming up, and then you guys have some special thing going on. Can you tell the listeners about that? And so that if they're in the area, is this something they can go to? Can they bring their youth groups to? Give us some info on that.
Sure. Yeah. So this year is the 50th anniversary of the March for Life. And so I just love the March for Life in Washington, D.C. It's an incredible event. Pro-lifers for 50 years have been out there, rain, snow, proclaiming that every life is sacred, the dignity of the human person. And so around the March for Life, there's a number of events that have rose up. And so this year, we're, along with the collaboration with the Knights of Columbus, we're hosting an event in Washington, D.C. It's called Life Fest. You can go on the sistersoflife.org website and see a posting of it. We have a wait list for entrance right now, but the whole message of Life Fest is to recommit ourselves as a church, as Americans, as people, to life, recommit ourselves to love, to recommit ourselves to loving women who are pregnant and in need, recommit ourselves to healing. We know that after 50 years of abortion in our country, there's so many people who are suffering, and all of us have an opportunity to become agents of healing, to bring that message of mercy to the world. And so, at the Life Fest, it's going to be in Washington, D.C. We'll have different speakers sharing their testimonies, their stories, and we'll have a mass, and then we'll all march together.
Yeah, no, I think it's super helpful because a lot of people, I think, in the church, we all know, hey, Roe v. Wade got overturned, but it's like, okay, we won the battle, but we're still in the thick of the war. And it's like, okay, now that that's done, what am I supposed to do? What's the next step? Because obviously it's not a done deal. Obviously there's a lot of work that needs to get done in terms of legislation, activism, support. So that's awesome. So I'm going to put the link to the Sisters of Life website in the show notes so that if you're able to get on the waiting list, you can go and attend. If not, you can still join the Sisters for the March for Life. What is the date? Is it on the 20th?
Yeah, Friday, January 20th, and it'll be live streamed as well. So if people aren't in the area, they can watch that. And yeah, because it's all about, as you say, conversion of culture and building a culture of life. We're not just fighting against an evil. We want to build something new. And this happens one heart at a time. It happens in our own hearts. And so, yeah, we invite everyone to watch the live stream and to join us in prayer, and that we can all be converted to know and love our own dignity and share that with others.
Well, thank you for your witness that pro-life is so much more than anti-abortion,
That's right.
and that, I mean, that's the heart and soul of what you're doing we're not against something, we're for something, for life and for love. And so, sister, God bless you. Be assured of our prayers, and please keep us and all of our listeners in here as well. Thanks for coming on the show.
I will. Thank you, Jason.
Thanks,
Great
sister.
to be with you.
You too.